UN Global Compact on Migration. Objective 10. Prevent, combat, and eradicate trafficking in persons in the context of international migration. 26. We commit to take legislative or other measures to prevent, combat, and eradicate trafficking in persons in the context of international migration by strengthening capacities and international cooperation to investigate, prosecute, and penalize trafficking in persons, discouraging demand that fosters exploitation leading to trafficking, and ending impunity of trafficking networks. We further commit to enhance the identification and protection of and assistance to migrants who have become victims of trafficking, paying particular attention to women and children. To realize this commitment, we will draw from the following actions. A. Promote ratification and accession and implementation of the Protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, supplementing the United Nations Convention against Transnational Organized Crime, in brackets UNTOC, end brackets. B. Promote the implementation of the Global Plan of Action to combat trafficking in persons and take into consideration relevant recommendations of the UNODC Toolkit to combat trafficking in persons and other relevant UNODC documents when developing and implementing national and regional policies and measures relating to trafficking in persons. C. Monitor irregular migration routes which may be exploited by human trafficking networks to recruit and victimize smuggled or irregular migrants in order to strengthen cooperation at bilateral, regional, and cross-regional levels on prevention, investigation, and prosecution of perpetrators, as well as on identification of and protection and assistance to victims of trafficking in persons. D. Share relevant information and intelligence through transnational and regional mechanisms, including on the modus operandi, economic models, and conditions driving trafficking networks. Strengthen cooperation between all relevant actors, including financial intelligence units, regulators, and financial institutions, to identify and disrupt financial flows associated with trafficking in persons, and enhance judicial cooperation and enforcement with the aim to ensure accountability and end impunity. E. Apply measures that address the particular vulnerabilities of women, men, girls, and boys, regardless of their migration status, that have become or are at risk of becoming victims of trafficking in persons and other forms of exploitation by facilitating access to justice and safe reporting without fear of detention, deportation, or penalty, focusing on prevention, identification, appropriate protection and assistance, and addressing specific forms of abuse and exploitation. F. Ensure that definitions of trafficking in persons used in legislation, migration policy, and planning, as well as in judicial prosecutions, are in accordance with international law in order to distinguish between the crimes of trafficking in persons and smuggling of migrants. G. Strengthen legislation and relevant procedures to enhance prosecution of traffickers, avoid criminalization of migrants who are victims of trafficking in persons for trafficking-related offences, and ensure that the victim receives appropriate protection and assistance, not conditional upon cooperation with the authorities against suspected traffickers. H. Provide migrants that have become victims of trafficking in persons with protection and assistance, such as measures for physical, psychological, and social recovery, as well as measures that permit them to remain in the country of destination, temporarily or permanently in appropriate cases, facilitating victims' access to justice, including redress and compensation, in accordance with international law. I. Create national and local information systems and training programs which alert and educate citizens, employers, as well as public officials and law enforcement officers and strengthen capacities to identify signs of trafficking in persons, such as forced, compulsory, or child labour in countries of origin, transit, and destination. J. Invest in awareness-raising campaigns in partnership with relevant stakeholders for migrants and prospective migrants on the risks and dangers of trafficking in persons, and provide them with information on preventing and reporting trafficking activities. This has been the end to the UN Global Compact on Migration. Objective 10. Prevent, combat, and eradicate trafficking in persons in the context of international migration. Wonder if they will be applying the removal of assets from Soros foundations that traffic people, as well as the likes of the Vatican that trafficked over 300,000 children during the Argentinian Dirty War from Argentina into Spain, many of which went missing, under the current Pope, Mr. Bergoglio, also known as Francis. Anyway, toodles for now. Hope you're more informed presently than when you entered.